understand the mystery. First take a look at the history. The words we use will give us clues. So join us now in Church Chatter.
Welcome to the Church Chatter podcast, where we unpack a different church word or phrase each week. I'm Dillon. I'm an ELCA Lutheran pastor.
I'm Sam. I study language and culture, and this is episode 62. Episode 62, we're going to do not answers, because we don't always have answers, but rapid fire responses. We just have 11 questions, and we're both going to give pretty quick answers to them. And then next week for Christmas, we won't have an episode until close to the new year.
Right. So before we begin, what are you thinking?
Hold on, wait.
Oh, your candle?
Candle, yeah. I don't know if you have one where you are.
I do have a candle.
Do you have a lighter, though?
Well,
we've got one here.
My candle's almost out, so your candle will have to be for both of us.
We are going to have to go candle shopping soon.
Yeah, that's a large flame.
Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead.
So we're talking about what excites us recently.
You always word. What are you paying attention to recently?
What are you paying attention to? Recently, what I'm paying attention to is that this year on Christmas Day, it is just going to be the four of us. On Christmas morning, opening our gifts with our children, and I'm really looking.
It's the four of us for a little bit until the early afternoon.
Yeah. But we usually have company, very, very early, and it's a mix match thing. And so I'm looking forward to coming down and doing presents and opening stockings and cooking peppercorn smoked bacon and with the girl. I'm looking forward to that, kind of a
slow Christmas morning.
A slow Christmas Day morning, because we haven't had one of those in a while. And then
I'm not sure we've ever had one since I
don't think we did.
5 years.
And then doing family dinner later, and with all the works and the fixings. But I've been thinking about that. A lot lately, and that's what I've been thinking on, and it brings me great joy that the four of us, actually there's five of us, because our dear dog Magdalene will be with us, which is very sweet. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And you, what is tickling your fancy these days?
Mine's not. Hold on. Mine is not as light and fun.
Of course.
I have been thinking about this book that I'm in the middle of reading right now.
Hold on. Oh, real quick. By the way, I shouldn't throw this 2 cents in, but I'm going to. I picked it out for you. Just remember that I was in the nature section at Barnes & Noble, and I saw that, and I thought, I know somebody who would like that.
Dillon and I go to Barnes & Noble probably once a week, I feel like, if not once a week, every other week, which is a big deal where we live, because you have to drive an hour to get to a Barnes & Noble. And we make sure we are there often, because it's one of the last big bookstores. And we are nonfiction people, so we know exactly where to go. We go to the religion section, the philosophy, the social sciences. I always go to the poetry, and you look there sometimes too. The nature.
But I always go to the nature section. I love the nature section.
Every nonfiction section we get there. And Dillon found this book. So it's called Feminism in the Wild. And again, Zoom is not focusing right. But Feminism in the Wild, How Human Biases Shape Our Understanding of Animal Behavior. And this book is so good. It is all about biologists and the way people who have studied for a long time our natural world, our non-human natural world, because by the way, humans are part of the natural world, right? But it's all about how colonized science has become, and how white white Western men are the ones who have done this science, and they've taken this white Western capitalistic competition, individualism, male norms and projected that onto their studies. But actually, now that there's women the past couple of decades, especially in this discipline, their research is showing like, wait a second, you keep talking about how like female creatures across species are very docile and submissive, and how men are like dominant and all these things. That's not the whole truth, actually. And even like our Western stuff of like individualism and animals will do anything for their own individual survival. And that's not always true either. Sometimes the more dominant truth, there's truth in that, but that's not the whole story, but it is the story we've been fed. Actually, across many, many, many species, the females are the dominant ones. Across many, many, many species, animals will actually die for the betterment of the group, which is called altruism, right? And that exists as well, this like sacrificial kind of love that people will do, not even for direct kin creatures, I'm calling them. But anyway, it's so good. And it's essentially how everything we thought we knew about the natural world, it's bias. That research is problematic and we need to start questioning it. So good. Anyway, that's what I'm obsessing over these days.
Excellent.
So we have 11 questions. We're just going to go back and forth. We don't know each other's answers. We just came up with these questions, but we don't know each other's answers yet. I have a hunch some of your answers, but we'll see. So go ahead. Number 1.
All right. So why Jesus?
Why Jesus? I'm going to tell you first, and then you're going to answer. Is that how we're going to do this?
Yeah.
Okay. For me, why Jesus? I am not looking for spiritual transcendence. I feel like a lot of people's spirituality is like, I want to go somewhere else. I want to meditate in order to put my mind somewhere else. That's not what I'm after. I don't know much about this reality that we find ourselves in, but I do know one thing for sure. I'm here. I either chose to come here, or I was put here, or I was forced here, or I'm just the right concoction of like atoms and elements and stardust to be here, to be alive. So for whatever reason, I'm here. And Jesus was also here. And he wept and he laughed and he had friendships and he suffered and he was here for all of that. He wasn't transcending to some other realm. He was here, like in the flesh, right? So he was historical and political, and he was a religious disruption because he dared to actually be here and notice this reality that he was in for whatever reason. And he had this commitment to not only this reality, but to his imagination and how it could be arranged differently. And that's what I'm after. Does that make any sense?
Beautiful.
So that's why Jesus for me.
It's wonderful.
Why Jesus for you?
All right, so why Jesus for me? So I grew up with Jesus and his stories. They were stories that he was a person, a historical person who was given to me, and his teachings or his stories were given to me from very early on as a child. And so I didn't know anything but Jesus. Just like if someone were to grow up, they would know nothing but the Torah or Buddha or the Vedas or something like that. Someone who grows up in a religion or a faith setting. And so I grew up with Jesus and his teachings, and so that's why I connected with Jesus early on. Some people are given the stories of Jesus and don't connect, but I did, because I grew up with Jesus and his stories. And so Jesus for me is deeply resonates with me, because Jesus's ethics and morals around caring for people while we're here on earth, I think, makes for a good society. So Jesus has a set of morals and values, most of which come out of Judaism, but he gave his own spin and twist on kind of a newness of them. And so how to orient a society here on earth that cares for each other and looks at people on the margins, and his moral and ethical teachings, to me, make for a better society. And so I can get on board with those. But Jesus also gives hope when people find themselves in fear. There was a big thing about the Roman Empire and being overtaken and oppressed, and not really knowing what would happen to their children after they died. And so Jesus gave a hope that where we have come from, we will go back to in the afterlife. That was the basics of Jesus, that when one dies, they go back to be with God. And so there's this both hope for orienting Earth, caring for each other, and also this kind of hope also in the afterlife that we go back to be with God. So both of those things resonate with me. And then the other two things that I really, really hold on to is Jesus's teachings around nonviolence in a very, very violent world. And Jesus shared and ate meals with really gross people. It's very well documented. And so I like all of those things about Jesus, and that's what resonates with me. Okay, next question.
That's good stuff. Yeah. I feel like you and I believe a lot of the same things, but we come at it very differently. But one of the things that kind of binds our philosophies is we want a grounded faith. We want to be pretty grounded. We're not, at least not now in this season of life, we are not what I call escapist Christians. We're not like, the party is happening somewhere else. No, it's here, you're about to miss it. And I think, I just want to riff really quickly. That Rob Bell helped me, piece of hair in my mouth, hold on. Rob Bell helped me see this pretty clearly, but the people who are like, and listen, if this is you, I get that it's always there. I get it. I do. And this might be me in 10 or 20 years. But the parents who are like, oh, they have like a 12-year-old beautiful child right in front of them. Or like a 30-year-old child right in front of them, calling them. And they're like, oh, I just miss when they were babies. I miss when they were babies, right? Our ability to love the life that's in front of us is directly correlated to whether or not we have grieved what has happened. Yeah. Like yes, it's sad when babies grow up. Can you grieve it fully so that you can be here now? Right. So whenever people are like, oh, like whenever it's just all about heaven and all about how the party is somewhere else, I often start to think, oh, you have ungrieved grief. So there's something that you haven't faced. Right. And some people face really terrible things. I'm not even saying that I'm above this. Me too. Right. There's things that I have not grieved. So therefore I am distracted from the beautiful stuff right in front of me. Anyway, a grounded faith.
So that's very interesting. So mostly in my head, and that's actually the next question, but I want to connect it to our first question, why Jesus? I always think Jesus was, and you and I know this, it's like preaching to the choir, but Jesus was mostly 90% concerned about living a renewed life or a new life here on earth. And Jesus actually did care a lot about heaven, a concept of heaven, and that was to bring heaven to earth. Not that he didn't believe that you went back to God in the afterlife, but it was about, and that type of a quote unquote heaven, but it was about bringing a newness, bringing God's kingdom here on earth. And so, and that's really tangible. It's like contextual. It's not like some abstract, theory about like going to some, this might be irreverent, but going to some, Golden Street palace in the sky. It's about having people who have good housing and good health care and good relationships and good marriages and food.
You also, Dillon, you never have to apologize for your irreverence to me. If you're apologizing to our faceless listeners, go for it. But I love your reverence. I'm here for it. All right, number two. Go ahead. Do you have something else to say?
No, number two.
Number two, Dillon, how do you pray?
So I had to actually think about this one when you asked me the questions a day or so ago. I was thinking, and then I've been thinking, and when I wrote them down, these days I mostly pray through my thoughts. Very rarely do I pray out loud any longer, unless I am at church leading worship, or praying before a meal, if we have a meal at church or something like that. Or when I go to visit someone, like someone who is sick, whether they're at their house or the hospital or they're dying, I pray out loud with them. Sometimes liturgical prayers from the worship book, or extemporaneous prayers. I pray with them to bring comfort and healing. But my own prayers, like when I say that I pray for someone, or oh, I will keep them in my prayers are thoughts. I have that thought, and then I take it and I give it to something that is greater than myself. I reflect on it, but I give it. I very rarely pray with words these days. So most of my prayers are in my thoughts. And when I do pray, um, not at church leading worship, but when I do pray, when I go, a lot of times if I'm not holding the person's hand, I have a bracelet, and I have to kind of hold on to something that's tangible, because I get a little lost sometimes. And so uh, most of the time, my prayers are in my thoughts.
Yeah. So it's verbal for you a lot of times.
It's verbal, but it's also I don't know, because it's also nonverbal. I don't usually. I mean, unless it is at church or
Mhm.
with someone who I'm visiting, it's actually not verbal. It's in my
So
it,
there's this story of a priest.
it's
Well, I want to explain something to you and then tell me if this is what you mean.
okay.
Like Buddhists do it, like, and there's like meditations of loving kindness. I think you already know where I'm going with
Yeah,
it, I'm sure.
yeah.
But there's a story of a priest. It might have been Father Richard Rohr. I can't remember who it is now. But
Mm,
he has or had a prison ministry, and he was in this room with prisoners,
mm.
inmates, just I mean murderers, right, rapists,
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
some violent men, and some of them who are there for life. So there's no hope that they're ever getting out, right? But
Hmm.
still, these are human beings worthy of a spiritual life. So he would go in, and he was in a room of these men, and he would walk them through this prayer of, and he would say, don't use words, but close your eyes and think of somebody. It could be somebody in this room. It could be a family member. Somebody who you don't love, somebody who's very hard for you to love, an enemy, somebody who's annoying to you, whoever it is. Close your eyes and send them good vibes, love, kindness, whatever it is, right? So is that what you mean? Whenever it's not
Yeah,
always words?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So for me, prayer is rarely words, and it's a posture, is how I think of it. Is like it's prayer is a posture.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, Saint Francis of Assisi has, and I'm gonna butcher his quotation here, but he has. It's not necessarily specifically about prayer, but he says, share the gospel with people all the time, and if necessary, use words.
Yeah.
That is kind of my prayer life. I'm constantly. Um, it's a gospel message when someone says, will you pray for me, specifically as a pastor? Of course I do, and I will. And but not all the time do I use words.
Right.
It is taking that concern, honing and pondering in on that in my thoughts, and then giving that to that which is greater than me, which is God. But I don't have to always use words for that. Actually, very rarely do I. And so that's mostly how I pray these days, without words.
Yeah. That's good.
How do you pray?
So for me, it's less talking. I don't pray out loud. I don't
Right,
like to do it. I don't like praying before meals. It's very awkward. I wasn't raised on it. It's very weird to me.
right.
I used to like my grandmother when we would go to her house like twice a year. She would have us like kneel at her bedside and like pray. And I just remember
Sure.
looking like this is so weird. I don't want to do
Well,
this.
I grew up with that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's abnormal for me because I didn't grow up with it. But for me, prayer is less about talking and more about listening typically. So I have a couple things that I do. I actually have these practices. These are actually like legit practices that I do. So Dillon and I are different because Dillon's main goal when he wakes up in the morning is to calm down. And my main goal when I wake up in the morning, so we're doing this on Zoom because it's easier logistically, and you can only see whoever's talking. But sometimes I wish we could see both faces at the same time to see your reactions because it's funny.
Mm,
But so when Dylan wakes up in the morning, his main goal, correct me if I'm wrong, is to calm down. My main goal when I wake up in the morning is to hype up. So Dillon is very like he needs to meditate, he needs silence, he needs 2 cups of coffee. He's a morning person. He's not a grumpy person in the morning, but he's just a little slow, right? And actually I'd say that your whole life is typically like you want silence, you want quiet, you want calm. Would you agree?
I would agree.
I am the opposite. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree.
When I wake up, I'm like, let's hype up. And I've got loud music. I've got like workout music on. I want all the energy. And all day long is pretty much like that of just this like, go, go, go. And yeah, that takes a lot of forms. And I say that because for me, my prayer life, it depends. I'm a seasonal person. And I'd say about 8 months out of the year, and it comes in waves like everything. I'm like, hype up. I want energy. I want loud music. I want a podcast in my ear. I'm reading 3 books, 4 books a week. I'm like, go, 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 right? And Dillon sees this intimately. He knows this. Every like 4 or 5 months, I'll have a month or so of just like a hibernation. It's usually around the New Year, so I'm probably coming up on it, and then it's also around like May or June. I don't know. We'll see, but that happens. That seems I don't. It's not an exact science, but every 3, 4, 5 months, I have a month or two of like okay, of like silence and stillness. And whenever I'm in those silence and stillness moments, it's a lot more about listening to me because that feeds. And this is all about my creative life. It feeds my writing and my creativity. So it's like go 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 produce. And then I have to listen because my body will give me signs like it's time to be more quiet and listen. And that's where my listening prayers come in. So some things that I do is I drive it during those periods, which is usually right before a big project will take form for me, like a new book or I have to, whatever it is. Um, I will drive with no music. I have been known to get rid of my phone for long periods, but I don't do that anymore because Dillon doesn't like being my secretary. People start to call him, but I will like turn off my phone. I'll just kind of like check out and like hibernate as much as I can. And that's where prayer really comes in. And prayer for me is creating enough silence and stillness where I can hear what I call the voice of God telling me what project I feel even like weird talking about it, but it is the truth. And this is the language I've attached to it. I can hear sometimes actually very verbal. I hear it's a quiet voice, but it's there if you're quiet enough to hear it telling me the title of my new book, the point of it, and sometimes I'll even get a whole chapter. And Dillon knows this too, at like 2 in the morning, just like boom, here it is. So prayer for me, all that is to say, how do I pray? It's a lot of quiet and listening. And it has a lot to do with my creative life of listening, and I'm given instructions. I'm told this is what you will do. Um, and in those times, this is also prayer because prayer is posture. For me, it's like a posture that you come at life with. It's noticing. So I will slow down and I will notice like my children's faces. I'll just stop and stare at them. And that feels like prayer to me. The color of the sky, the exact moment. Sometimes I'll just be like, okay, just notice this moment, what is happening. And that's prayer to me. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think it's important for our listeners that if you were brought up in a religious tradition, hopefully maybe they didn't, but hopefully they would have relayed that prayer is deeply diverse. It always has been. And sometimes the church has been really, really good at instructing and teaching people in that, and some have not. But prayer is not one way. Prayer is not, most people, because they see it in pictures or something like that, someone by the bedside with their hands folded, their eyes closed, their head bowed. That is a form of prayer, and there's nothing wrong with that type of prayer. But that is not the only type of prayer. Some people need that rigidity. They need that routine and that rigidity. They need that posture, that form. And yet some other people do not. And again, there's all different types of prayer. Um, Calling for specific things, looking at certain things, centering oneself on certain things. It's a very, it's actually a beautiful practice, but it's not always one way.
Yeah. Well, I have one more answer.
Okay.
So
Oh,
more
I'm sorry.
practical.
I'm sorry. I
So
didn't.
that's some of it. But a more practical thing that I do is I have this notebook, and it is
Mhm.
almost full. If you see that, most of those pages are a practice that I do. So there's this community that I'm a part of. It's called the Love Let community. If anybody knows Liz Gilbert, she wrote Eat, Pray, Love, among many other things. But she and All the Way to the River, which is out now and so good, such a good book. But anyway, the Love Let community, which is short for love letters. I'm part of this community. It's essentially a two-way prayer community.
Mhm.
And what it does now, this might sound crazy to you, and I think I talked about this on an episode already, but essentially what you do is in your notebook, and if you're a writer, if you're a writer, that could actually make it more difficult for you. But I will write almost every day. Sometimes I'll go a day or two not doing it, but I won't go longer than that. You write, dear. Now, some people have trouble with the word God. I do too, but I've been trying to work on it. But you can write, dear love, or if you would do what I do, which is, dear God, what would you have me know today? And then you just start free writing, and something happens where something else starts to kind of take over, and you get these nuggets of wisdom for yourself. And you can believe that that's the voice of God or another voice. It doesn't really matter to me at this point. All I know is if it's helpful, I take it. Um, because I feel like, especially in the West, I don't even know if this is a Western thing. I'm just assuming it is actually, but um, we really think that prayer is us talking, but actually prayer is more us listening. So that's what this practice is, is like, yeah,
And
talking is part of it. That's for sure part of it. But also you need to quiet and listen or create a space. So that's what this is in my notebook, is a space to actually listen, like, what am I being told? So usually it's, God, what would you have me know today? But sometimes it's, God, what would you have me know today about this person I work with who's annoying me? Or, I mean, you can be very specific: grief, love, marriage, motherhood, um, my relationship to food, right? I mean, you can be really specific if you need to.
and
And
God is not. Yeah, God is also so. Um, One of my professors at Gettysburg, I'm trying to remember how she specifically said it, but when we learned about prayer and how to pray and how to teach people how to pray and such things, she would always say that that prayer in many ways is about, it's not about you speaking to God, but it's about God speaking through you.
mhm.
So it's this back and forth relationship, um, that is a conversation. So like the two-way prayer that you do and that Liz Gilbert has people do, that is actually letting God, that, and I know people get weird about this, but God, that really God is not just out there in the sky. God is also, there's a little bit of God that lives in all of us. So the God that lives in you, the spirit that lives in you, whatever you want to give that language to, um, it's about that connection and that relationship through prayer, and it's about God praying through you. So like when you're writing those things, of course it's God writing through you and you having a relationship by writing that down.
Yeah, that's good.
Next question.
Hmm.
Um, all
Number
right.
three.
So number three, what vices do you turn to when things get hard or bad? Or
My answer is really quick.
well, so is mine.
My number one vice is productivity. When
Okay.
things get hard, I make things, I go to work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Productivity, Marshalls, and martinis.
Oh, I love that.
In that order. In that order. When there's something
Yeah.
I'm trying to avoid because I just don't want to face it, or it's too hard, or it's too disruptive, or too uncomfortable, first I work. I'll do that for a couple weeks. I'll work
Mm-hmm.
all day, every day. And whenever that doesn't numb me enough, I'll go to Marshalls, buy a new bag, buy a new top. When that kind of fades, that one's usually much quicker. That's a day or two because I run out of money. Really, can't run out of minutes to work, but I can run out of money to spend real fast. Martinis,
Yeah.
have a martini,
Well, martinis are good though.
and then
Um,
whenever that doesn't work and I wake up with a headache the next morning, then I'm like, okay, all right, fine, let's face it, let's do
mhm.
it, right? And I almost have to run through. all of that. And I believe that God lets us. And the way I picture God, I know I said this would be quick, but the way I picture God is like not condescending, but just almost like whenever our children do something that we know is like, oh, this isn't going to get them anywhere, but there's something so sweet about it. We just let it play out. Do you know what I mean? Like when they're playing,
Mm.
when they're trying to like open a box and we know that they're opening it from the wrong side, but it's kind of sweet. So we just let them and like laugh a little bit. That's how I picture God with us of like, oh, it's so sweet that she thinks working really hard for a month is going to help her. It's not. Oh, it's so sweet. She's buying another bag. That's so cute. It's not going to
Mm.
help her, but she can do it. Oh my gosh, she just had 2 martinis on a Thursday night because she is bored and doesn't want to face this. That's so adorable. And because God knows that after it, it's whatever the thing is, it's going to be there.
Right.
So here we are. Okay, anyway, what vices do you lean on when things get hard,
So
Dylan?
my first one is food. I love food and I love rich food. And when I am stressed or had a long day or something like that, I will come home and I'll just eat the whole refrigerator. A couple appetizers, a salad, and I'm not talking. I like greens and vegetables too, but like I'll do a whole smorgasbord, a whole meal, and I'll enjoy it, and I love that, and I love food, and I'll never not like food. But sometimes I could overdo it, especially when I'm finding myself in a space of stress or anxiety or a long day or something like that. I first take out on food, and I know that
Really
some.
quick, but also not a bad thing. Food gives us the spike of dopamine, just like working and feeling
It
valued gives us
does,
a spike of
it
dopamine.
does,
Shopping
and
gives us dopamine. Martinis give us dopamine
oh
and
yeah, oh I
feel good,
yeah.
and that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, and I love martinis too. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But so, and I like, but I don't do it in a hoarding way. I would love to come home, like if I'm in a stressful situation, and I come home like from work or whatever the case may be. So I definitely want to overeat, and that's not appropriate. That's not the best. But sometimes I want to come home and I want to overeat, but I also want to share. I want to share the food. I want to sit down with you or the girls. I want to, I don't know, complain complain about the day or what or offer something up that did actually bring me joy. Something like that. So that first. And now I know that some parishioners of mine listen to this podcast, and this one might be a little shocking and upsetting to you, but I'm only being truthful. Is that I long if I have a very, very stressful day and everything is coming at me and my neurons are like, ooh, I feel like I'm going to explode. I want nothing more than to go on my back porch, even in the dead of winter, and smoke a cigarette. Oh, I could feel it right here. When I had a very stressful job before I went to seminary, when I worked at the college, even well, when I worked at the state too, but to a lesser extent, I would come home and there was a little back porch in the staff house where I lived on the college campus. And after a long day, a 10 and 12-hour day, I would come and I would sit on my back porch and I'd crack open a beer and I'd smoke a cigarette or two. And I haven't had a cigarette in well since 2019, I think. So however long that is. But oh, I could just crave. I used to smoke Camel Blue Wides with no filter,
I
and
remember. Oh,
yeah,
oh.
oh, Camel Blue Wides with no filter. And so when I'm really stressed,
When Dylan and I lived in Harrisburg together before we were married, before we had kids, we would walk around Harrisburg at night. We're really laying it out there. We would go to this bar and we'd have a couple martinis and we walk around Midtown Harrisburg and we would chain smoke. Meaning Dylan would chain smoke. I'd have 1.5 cigarettes and be too like lightheaded to even manage it. And he would just keep going and going. And I'm pretty impressed because I think it was right around the time I got pregnant. You were like, that's it. That's enough. I can't be a dad who smokes. And you weren't a casual smoker. You
No.
weren't like, you could go all day not smoking. Just whenever you did smoke, it was just like, keep going.
Yeah.
But now you don't.
Yeah. I quit when we got pregnant with Tabby.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are my two vices. One of which I still do with the food,
Hmm.
which I'm not proud of, but it's the truth. And now the cigarettes, it's just a longing. It's a longing for that nostalgia of that moment. Even the
Well, they're
smell.
also addictive, physically
Well,
addictive.
sure, I realize that, but
There's a difference. Yeah.
and I know most people hate that disgusting smell.
When we're somewhere and we walk by somebody smoking, this is what Dillon does.
Okay. Well, it's important. It's important now to move on to the next question.
All right, number 4. Why marriage? Why
Okay.
marriage?
So I'm going first, right?
Hmm.
Okay. So for me, marriage helps me with commitment. It helps me
But
with.
why commitment?
Well, hold on. Whoa, whoa, whoa. This isn't a back and forth here. Um, just listen to my answer. Marriage helps me with commitment, and I enjoy the partnership that comes with marriage and the kind of bouncing back and forth, the differences and the thoughts and the ideas of giving that to someone that knows you better than just someone else, right? So coming home, you're cohabitating with that person. You're most likely, obviously, in marriage, hopefully, you're romantically connected to them in a way, and you're committed to them more than you're committed to your coworkers or your friends or something like that. And you're in this committed romantic relationship or partnership with someone who really becomes, hopefully, your best friend. And you feel comfortable to share the grittiness of yourself, but also the joys that you have, and you're for me, you kind of have that marriage is this kind of bouncing back and forth, somebody who you are committed to. Um, you could do some of those things in not in a marriage. I realize that. But for me, it's that partnership and commitment of the good and the bad, and kind of having that person to solely connect with.
Yeah.
That's my simple answer. I'm interested to hear yours.
Well, I have kind of 2 quick things. The first one is, do you ever hear, there's a lot of examples, but like if kids go to their grandparents' house and then the mom or dad comes and picks up the kids and the kids just start misbehaving and they're screaming or they're crying or they're having a meltdown. And some grandparents are like, they weren't like that for me at all. They're so great for me. And then you get here and you start crying. Or I oftentimes will hear dads say that of like, oh yeah, they're really well behaved whenever their mom's not here. The reason that happens is because when a child feels really safe and connected to somebody, that's where they can let out all of the emotions that the world has taught them are bad. Right? So
Yeah.
whenever a parent picks up their child, that child probably loved being with their grandparents for the weekend or whatever, the night, the day, right? They probably loved it. It's not like they were like holding on to this thing and like being miserable secretly. It's not that. But then the mother or the father walk in and they had this meltdown. It's because they had all these built up emotions, and the mom walks in or the dad walks in and they're now safe to let it all out, right? Of like, oh, yes, I can like take a breath and release it all. Um, Same with oftentimes because moms tend to spend more time with their kids in a lot of families. But if a dad takes the kids to the store or to church or whatever, and they were so well behaved, and they're like, oh, yeah, they're well behaved with me. That's because when mom enters the scene, they feel like they can let go. And I say all of that because I think that's what marriage is as well, for me. But for a lot of people, it's the place where you can come home where, like, to some degree we all have personas, right? Like I can't take, as much as I value authenticity more than anything else, I would love to take all of me everywhere, but whenever I'm a professor, there's a certain face I put on. I don't get to go into the classroom and just spill for an hour to my students about how hard the morning was because my children were screaming and hitting each other and all these things. That's not the place for it, right? So, but I get to go out into the world and be those parts of myself. But then I get to come home to a marriage and just be like, oh my goodness, and like release. Do you know what I mean?
Right, I do. And I think that this might come out to be slightly cheesy, because I know, especially as a pastor, that this does not always end up working for everyone. And what I mean by that is this. Um, I think that when two people come together and they make promises or vows or commitments, or they kind of have this pact or this union or this covenant, they make promises to each other, to uplift each other, to be with each other in the good and the bad, and the sick and the not sick, all these things. And that deeply matters. Sometimes that doesn't work, and there's a separation, there's a split, and people have to go their separate ways, and obviously that happens with through divorce.
Well,
But
I've also married and divorced, so we have to be like, you're in my second marriage, so we have to be careful not to be too on a high horse of like, you make a promise and you got to keep it, right? There are reasons to not.
if you were following what I was saying, you will see that that's exactly what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah, I just
I'm
want to really
I'm
ground.
I'm saying though for people that can and do or want to make those promises or those vows, it is important for those to be something, right?
Mhm.
So when you're committing yourself, I don't make those vows for people that I work with. I don't make them for my friends. I make them for my wife, right? And sometimes, as I stated very clearly, that doesn't work for some people, and so therefore that they go their separate ways, and that's okay, right? But for people that do, um, how do I want to say, make those, or want to keep on, that being a part of their life, there is something different, that comes with that than just being like a friend or an acquaintance or a connection. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I have another half of my answer. I'm going to be quick about it because we're not even halfway through these questions and we're supposed to be fast.
Well,
Um, you already know this. I heard this analogy. I wrote a poem about it recently. But so for Dylan and I, um, first half a decade together was really exciting because we were dating, and that's always really fun. And then we like got moved in together and got engaged, and that's always exciting. And then COVID happened, and we had our first baby, and that's exciting. And then 9 months later, pregnant with our second baby. How exciting! And we were also both. I was getting my doctorate during those years, and you were getting your master's of divinity. You were in seminary during those years, and we both graduated. And then we moved. We had like five different homes or something in like 4 years. We moved so much. It was so exciting, which is my jam. And then all of a sudden, it really slowed down. It got boring, is what happened. So I had to do some thinking like, oh, well, what is marriage once those big mile markers are kind of behind you? We're not having any more kids. We're not moving anytime soon. I mean, we'll probably move, but not soon. All these things. So here's the analogy that helps me. Falling in love is a garden, and uh, being in a marriage is becoming the gardener, right? A garden is so beautiful to walk through. Falling in love is so amazing. You walk into a garden, you're like, oh my gosh, look at it. But then a marriage is becoming a gardener where you actually start to see how much work is actually involved in making this garden beautiful. And you have to start asking questions about the soil that that person grew in, which is like conversations about your childhood and why do you do it this way and why are you like that? And then you also have to decide, and I put this in the poem that I wrote recently, but what do you prune and what do you let grow wild in each
yeah.
other? Right? Of like, there's certain things that Dylan has done, and there's certain things that I do where it's like I can't tolerate that I can't we need to change this thing. And then there's other things where it's like no, that has to be wild in them. I have to let that be whatever it is, right? And always in the conversation about what is this garden going to look like and what can we make it together, and having dirty fingernails and all of it, that really helps me of like, oh, now we have to create the garden and create something beautiful versus falling in love is just it is something beautiful. Now we
Well,
have
I
to
think
make it.
Yeah, I think the garden and gardener analogy is very good because that comes with what I started with, that marriage helps me commit. And if you know anything about, not you, but the collective, you, us, if we know anything about gardening, gardening is an absolute commitment. If you want good flowers and good vegetables, then you have to be committed. You have to vow to commit to this.
But
Because
commitment without the promise of a harvest. You're not
yeah,
you're not guaranteed anything.
you're not guaranteed anything. You know, you're going to get a couple cucumbers that are going to be good. You're going to get a couple pumpkins that are going to be good, and some of them are going to be spoiled.
But
And
even more intensely than that, I want to like really beat this metaphor. You have to put in the work, and there's no guarantee that your partner won't leave you tomorrow, cheat on you tomorrow, have
right,
an diagnosis tomorrow, die tomorrow, just wake up a different person tomorrow, right? Have a brain aneurysm tomorrow. I mean, there's so many things. So it's gardening without the promise that anything will come of it. There
right,
might be bloom. This might be terrible soil to begin with, but you keep gardening anyway and
yeah,
change what you can and don't change what you can't. Anyway, that's good.
beautiful,
Number 5.
beautiful. Number 5. Can you fall from grace?
I really promise I'm going to keep this one short. Um, I define grace as unearned love. Grace is unearned love. And if grace is unearned love, that means you cannot earn it and you cannot unearn it. Therefore, it cannot be lost. You cannot fall from it. Mic drop. That's all.
All right, so I'm going to read mine verbatim because it's similar, but I'm going to read it verbatim because we want to keep moving through here. So mine is no with an exclamation point. No with an exclamation point. You cannot fall from grace. Grace is given, not earned. And you can't fall from something that you did not get or you did not earn, right? It's been given to you freely. And I just put this little note that time and time again, God calls us to come back with open arms, even when we go away and journey away. And you can see this, that God is all about restoration. That doesn't mean that there might not be some correction. There definitely is some correction, but correction doesn't have to be something that just stops there. It's about correction and restoration. And I always think about in Luke's gospel about the parable of the long lost son, or sometimes traditionally known as the prodigal son. And so, a simple answer: can you fall from grace? No, because grace was given to you, and so that's God's department. And so you can't fall from something that you didn't earn.
That's good.
Yeah.
Number 6. This question comes up a lot with religious, spiritual conversations. So I thought we could tackle it. How do you distinguish between the voice of God and your own voice?
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe, and what I've been taught is that God speaks in many ways and through many ways. Okay, so God speaks in many ways. So you could have one, let's just take Christianity, right? So you have Christianity as one big umbrella religion. Okay, but then you have Catholic and Protestant and Orthodox, those three. And then you can break them down even more into Protestant. Well, there's Methodist and Lutheran and Episcopalian and Presbyterian, right? There's Roman Catholic and there's Eastern Rite Catholic. There's all of these. And so, but God speaks in many different ways, but through many other ways does God speak. So I think that. And for me, the voice of God is distinct in that it is a voice of inclusion. And so when you find yourself in a space that God is speaking to you about including more people at the table, right? Okay, and bringing people to the table about inclusion, I believe that is the voice of God. Where you find bigotry and discrimination and kind of this idea of you're in and you're out, this kind of rigidity, for me, that is not God. That is some other voice. You could give it many different names. You could say it's coming from many different entities. But when there is exclusion, with a capital E, exclusion, that is not the voice of God. But when there is inclusion, and that doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want. It's not a free for all. I'm not saying that. But when there's inclusion of all people, that to me is the voice of God.
That's good. So for me, I feel like the question is flawed. This question that gets asked often, but it's as if there's a Venn diagram where this is the voice of God and this is my voice, and there's never any intertwining, right? But I think that's wrong. I think there's overlap. I think that just because it's coming from me doesn't mean it's not always divinely inspired, if you will. But here are
Sure.
the questions. So I heard a teacher say this and I wrote it down a while ago in my notebook because I love it. So here are the questions that I've been working on asking myself anytime I hear a voice or I have a thought or I have like this um, longing or desire or want or whatever. So the two questions I ask, number one, am I trying to impress or express? Right? Because God is often telling me to be honest and to express myself, but my own ego is often telling me to impress people. So before I do something, before I share something, before I whatever, am I trying to express or impress? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the second question, am I sharing this, whether it's a conversation, right? That someone else is saying something, and I'm not sure, like, am I offering something in the conversation or am I offering my own judgment that's coming from a bad place? So the question I ask is, am I sharing this to control or to connect? Because there's a difference. And if it is me wanting to connect with somebody, that is God, I believe, pushing me towards it. But if it's me wanting to control them by sharing my own agenda, that's often my own ego talking and encouraging me to do something that I probably shouldn't. That's self-serving. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
All right, number 7.
7.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So can theology exist without organized religion?
Yes. So theology is just meaning making about the divine, and organized religion does not and cannot own this entirely. And it makes me think of was it Barbara Brown Taylor who said, "Deep suffering makes theologians of us all." Was that
Yeah,
Barbara Brown Taylor?
I
I
believe
think
so.
deep suffering makes theologians of us all. So yes, theology can absolutely exist without organized religion. Organized religion has pros and cons, but there's a shadow side to it. But the pro of organized religion is it helps um, keep it in circulation. Things out in the wild always risk dying when things are institutionalized. There is some preservation there, although it does get manipulated sometimes. What about you? Do you think theology can exist without organized religion?
So I answer that yes and no. So theology is usually historically in all religions done in community. It's not done as individual. That's historic. Um, and so it's about theology is about groups of people getting together to interpret whether it's stories or thoughts or different types of things, and them kind of grappling about it. Yes, we believe that. No, we don't believe this, and
But
kind of
you think that community only exists in organized religion?
I'm not saying no. I said I answered it yes and no. The second part is a different thing. I'll share that. But historically, a lot of religions and faith structures have come together and offered a theology through community.
Mm,
That's historic.
yeah.
There is, however, individual theology or theologies that individuals have and they make on their own. They make their own interpretations. And they believe individual things, and that I think is fine too. I don't think one outweighs the other. I think that it's a yes and no, or a yes and no.
Well, I want to push back though, because
I,
individuals don't just come up with their own theology. Like what you very rarely do we have a human being who just drops in and they're not influenced by communities who come before them, right? They're building on Aristotle or Plato or Judaism or Jesus, right? Even like atheists think they're so special and nonconformists, but they all have some variants of the same kinds of things that came before them, right? We're all making worldviews based on the wisdom we've been handed. We don't
right, but
just
then if you go with that, yes, I would agree. But then if you go with that argument, then you would have to say, So you're, unless you're being very specific with the question of organized religion, what I'm so if you're going with that, Aristotle or whatever, even Aristotle and Plato and all those kind of stuff, they were working in an organized structure. They had students, they had a school, they had all these things. There
They
wasn't
also
any,
had the entirety of Greek culture
yeah,
behind
there
them.
wasn't anything unorganized about that.
Mhm.
So, um, so
That's
if
what
you,
I'm saying, though. When you say people have their individual theologies that they just come up with on their own, that's how you worded it. I don't think that's possible to just come up with a theology on your own. We're all.
yes, I think it's all communal in some way, but
Mhm.
some people are not. I'll just say I'll just say what I think. Um, if I really had to answer this in a very strict or narrow understanding, I would say no. No, I don't think I don't think theology can exist outside of an organized thing. I think it all comes from community. It all comes from people coming together and saying, "I believe this, but I don't believe that," or vice versa. And out of that comes a more individual understanding or interpretation of what a community has decided or not decided. But there's so many people out in the world. I mean, just go on the internet, which is crazy, crazy weird, with people having their own theologies about, and they're speaking about things they have no idea what they're talking about. So, what I'm saying is, yes, it does exist. People have their own theologies, and they don't really know the history of where they're coming from, so they call them their own theologies. And what I'm trying to say is, in a factual way, is it's true that people think that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we're not going to, but I would love to do a whole episode. I mean, maybe in the future, a whole episode just on this question because I feel like you and I need to unpack what does organized religion mean and what does theology mean because those things are words to define. You know, maybe we should.
I would think if you ask most people off the street, if you were to pull 5, 10 people off the street and say, "What is your theology?" Most of them would say, "I have no idea what you're talking about."
Yes, but they still
Um,
have a working theology. They have some opinion on the divine, right?
sure,
That's all.
they have an opinion. They have an
But that's all
opinion.
a theology is. It's just meaning
Yeah,
making about the divine.
right,
Some theologies are a lot less robust, but they still exist.
right.
You know,
Yeah,
even our children have a working theology, and they're
yeah.
three.
No, I don't discount that. Yeah. Okay.
Anything? That's a good question. I want to keep wrestling with it. Maybe we'll do a whole episode on the word theology.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Number 8, which kind of builds off number 7. What might heresy look like today, and who gets to decide?
So I have two things down here. I kind of racked my brain on this, but the first kind of, I would argue, modern heresy would be that some groups do not believe that God or the Spirit is still speaking to us today. So they believe that God is housed and capsulized in time with certain teachings or certain stories, and that there's not much going on in terms of like God the Spirit or the presence of Christ in a Christian context speaking to us today. I would argue that that is heretical, and that God continues to speak to us in many different ways, through individuals, through prayer, through the church and its teachings. So I would say that anyone who says that God isn't speaking, I would, if we could, I wouldn't call anybody a heretic, but I would say that that's heretical. I think it's heretical. That they would think that God's not still speaking and God's capsulized. So that's the first, and then the second would be, I see a massive resurgence. Now this is really going into like pastor land with like theology, but the stuff that I'm reading and seeing with a lot of denominations and churches when it comes to like heresy is a resurgence of something called monarchism. And monarchism is a certain understanding that is non-Trinitarian, and it's taking one of the three persons of the Trinity, and it is only focusing on one of them, and not the relationality of all three in one, the unity of all three in one. So, and a lot of times with a lot of denominations, they just want to focus on Jesus. and it's only Jesus. And they're not talking about the Holy Spirit. They're not talking about God the Creator. It's just, or they're just talking about God the Creator. They're just talking about the Spirit. And so I think that that is deeply heretical. And that is, I mean, you can find that all over.
Mm-hmm. You're not going to like my answer. Okay. So if people are watching, but a big difference between Dillon and I is he's such an institution man, and I can be really rogue. And this has been here since we first met. Are you all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you not want to talk about our institution rogue stuff?
No, I'm not trying to rush us, but I do have to respond to someone soon.
Sure. Okay. So we'll make it fast. So my answer is that anybody who ever claims that anything is heretical or anybody is a heretic is always operating from a place in a position of power in an effort to control. I don't think that anybody can ever say that's heretical. What you're really saying is I disagree with you, and I have the power to label you as less than. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I do.
And because the history of heresy is it was often met with criminal charges, with house arrests, with literal killings and lynchings and murders of people. So I am just anti-claiming anything as heretical, and I'm saying that off the back of Dillon saying certain things are heretical, which I think is funny because Dillon is very institutionalized.
No, that's
not institutionalized. Not institutionalized. That was the wrong word. But you believe that change happens from within. It's not wrong. It's not bad. It's just a difference in you and I. I don't operate.
But I would never go out on a stump in the middle of the town square. What was going on hundreds of years ago, and even in some cases still today, in some modern places and countries, I would never go out and say to somebody, "You're saying that God is not still speaking, so we're going to stone you." And call you a heretic. I would never do that. I would also not go up to somebody and say, "I think you're teetering on monarchism here." I would never do that. But I do think that those two things in particular are rampant.
That's good. Number 9. Just
a
few more fast.
What is the most spiritual thing about you?
That's really easy. My creative and writing process.
Okay.
It's very divinely ordained for me. It's very, it's a spiritual experience. Whenever I sit down to write, whenever I'm woken up in the middle of the night with full pages intact coming out of me, it's all very, as Liz Gilbert would say, big magic. What is the most spiritual thing about you? The fact
the most annoying thing that you think is annoying, I'll say. I love to sing hymns and sing them loud.
I don't think that's annoying, Dillon. I think it's annoying when you take the same tiny little 3-second verse and you sing that 3 seconds of the song for 4 days in a row. That's what I think is annoying. But if you could learn more words and sing a 45-second part of the song, I could get on board with that.
Well, if you sing short verses like that and you make them you sing them over and over, that's called a litany. And so you can, anyways. So so probably the most, I love to sing songs. I love to sing in general. And so, singing like spiritual songs or hymns or something like that. I do not like praise music, just to let everyone know, like modern 80s, 90s Christian praise music. I think it's terrible. And but I do love old hymns, and I love the stories that they tell. I actually love a good hymn sing, like where you would go and you would sing hymns and then you eat together. Oh, I love that. I love that. I wish there was more of that. That's something that is really deeply spiritual about me.
Yeah. Number 10, what is the most spiritual, otherworldly, or religious experience you have ever had?
You want to go first, or
It's up to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Becoming a mother.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. I've had some other things, but they're weird and personal to talk about. But becoming a mother, hands
Okay.
down,
Okay.
has been, you know, every,
Yeah, I get
yeah,
it. I
whatever.
get it.
So,
I
becoming a mother was very otherworldly and felt very portal open, liminal space kind of stuff.
I
What about
do I do not have fatherhood on my list, but I would also say that that has stretched me spiritually, and otherworldly. So I could add that to my list,
you?
because that has done that. I was
Mo-
looking at what's
Me,
that?
motherhood has stretched me phically. Anyway,
Sure.
keep going.
Oh God. Wow. Okay.
Well, that's
So
what you said has stretched you emotionally. Go ahead.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I was looking at this question in slightly a different way, and so I have three very basic things. I have experienced a lot of different spiritual moments in my life. Hearing people speak in tongues very loudly and chaotically, see people being slain in the spirit and kind of being in another worldly place. I must say that that brought me fear and trepidation, and I don't. For me, I don't find the calmness and the presence of God in those things. So I did experience those things, and that is deeply not for me. Um, Two things that are deeply spiritual for me or otherworldly that take me to a different place was when I was in college with a couple Jewish friends of mine at college. I experienced a Purim service. Purim is a festival day in the Jewish calendar, and we went and they read the whole story of the book of Esther, and it was a long, long service. They had a big meal after it. It was a lot of fun. They have like these little kazoos that at least they did at this synagogue in Harrisburg, and they would every time that they would say the word Haman, and Haman was this kind of Persian evil official in the book of Esther. Every time they said his name, which was a decent amount, they would like blow on these little kazoos and they'd scream to kind of disorient things because Haman is this evil person, right? It was just a really fun experience. I really liked the music and it was fun to be with my friends. That was a very fun experience. And then the last one is every time that I take communion, receive communion, I should say, um, I um, I look at that as a tangible encounter with a God who is still active in the world, and so I don't see that as just remembering something old, but really connecting with God in a real tangible way. And so the sacrament of communion does that for me, and so that allows me to have like an otherworldly experience.
That's good. Number 11.
Number 11 is, what is your favorite Christian word or phrase?
So right now, mine is incarnation.
Oh, how that's like very like thematically appropriate for the season.
Well, I was just gonna say it's very Advent, but it's also very, you and I have been using it a lot casually recently. Have you
Yeah.
noticed? Been
Hmm.
saying it. So I've just
Yeah,
been thinking
I
a
have.
lot about it. And I just am in this season of life, maybe it'll be different, or maybe it's just who I am. I don't know, but I like grounded. I like being in this moment. I like fleshy. I like earthy. I like here and now embodied. I like the idea of incarnation.
Mm,
Jesus was an incarnation, right? Like,
yep.
I just like that word. I feel like it's a heavy word. Like, there's so much in it.
Mm,
And I like heaviness. I like weighted down gravity because I'm so prone to floating off in this, like, and I like that the Jesus story for me, so many people paint the Jesus story as this transcendent, overly spiritualized, romantic thing, but actually it's very grounded and political, and it's an incarnation.
yep.
There you go. With all that comes with it. What's your
That's good.
favorite word or phrase right now?
So I have two things. I have a word which the word is raritas, and I just find it to be a fun word, and not a lot of people know about it, but it's called raritas, and it's a piece of decorative wood or stone that is behind the altar where you celebrate communion, and it's decorative and it points to something greater. and or it tells a story, and it's usually behind the altar. We have one at our church. During as churches evolved, they ripped out the reredos in some churches, and so some churches don't have them anymore. They're a real ancient piece, and they're usually very beautiful, carved wood and stone. And I like the architectural point that they point to, and then I like the word reredos. And then for me, I deal with a lot of people that are sick and dying sometimes, and sometimes I wonder where God might be, or where Christ might be. And so I always go back to this phrase that Jesus says in Matthew's gospel. Whether he actually said it or the early followers believed that he said it, it doesn't really matter to me. But it is this: I am with you always, even until the end of the age. And so that is a word or a promise or something that everywhere we look, God in Christ is with us, and so even in our, Samantha was talking about incarnational, about being with us in a true presence type of a way, that even in our suffering, God remains with us, and so even until the end of the age, whatever that may be. So those are my two things.
Good stuff.
Okay.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.
And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
To understand